Why Julius Caesar was not an emperor. This is a really common misconception, and honestly, it's one of my biggest pet peeves. I always say to my students that if they leave my class remembering nothing else, I hope this is the thing that sticks in their brain. Julius Caesar was not a Roman emperor. Now, to understand why, you have to go back a little bit. So for the first reason, Romans hated kings. In 509 BC, they had kicked out the monarchy, and they had started the res publica, the Republic of Rome. Res publica means the things of the people, the matters of the people. They had this fear of one-man rule, and so as part of the Republic, the people in charge, the Senate, they elected 2 consuls every year. So there's 2 people in charge every year, not 1. Now, Caesar managed to slightly buck this trend because he was very charismatic. He was a popularis, which means that he was a man of the people in terms of the fact that he got the popular vote. He didn't necessarily care about the people, but he used his influence over them to get their vote, mainly by giving money and games that they enjoyed a lot. He had very strong allies, so he had Crassus and Pompey, and together they formed the first triumvirate. He also was an excellent military leader, so he had managed to increase his standing in Roman society with his military accomplishments. This gave him a lot of support with the army. So he's got the popular support, he has the military support, and he has some strong allies in the Senate. Now, the problem is that those allies don't necessarily last, and in 49 BC, there was a civil war, and it was between himself and Pompey the Great. Pompey had been put in sole command of Rome by the Optimates. The Optimates are the side against populists like Caesar, and they had for ages been against Pompey and Caesar and Crassus, but in 52 BC, so 3 years before the outbreak of civil war, they had put Pompey in sole command because they feared Caesar getting in power once again, becoming a consul again. Cato the Younger was extremely prolific at this time. He was a very fantastic orator and speaker, and he was one of the leaders of the Optimates, and he was very much against Caesar. He was sort of in charge of putting Pompey in sole command of Rome, and this caused a problem because that's completely unconstitutional. So when Caesar finds out what's happened, he marches upon Rome, and Pompey, the Optimates, and Cato all leave Rome. Now, that's a good proportion of the Senate, people who are in charge of Rome. So in 48 BC, Caesar is elected dictator. Dictator doesn't have the same connotations in ancient Rome as it does today. It's an elected role that is for a time of national emergency. So Caesar is elected dictator by the people left in Rome because most of the Senate have run away with Pompey and Cato. Now, he's elected to a fixed term, so he's in sole control of Rome, but it's for a short period of time, something like 6 months is the usual. And the agreement is that you get elected, you fix whatever is going on, and then you give the power back. And Caesar does give the power back, but then, unfortunately for the Roman Republic, after the Civil War ends, they elect Caesar Dictator Perpetuo, which means dictator for life. So now they have gone from the Republic through a time of crisis, and they have effectively elected their own sole ruler, which is the thing that, if you remember, Romans hated more than anything else. They feared one-man rule. And ultimately, he is called Dictator Perpetuo, not Imperator. He is not an emperor, he is a dictator, which is different. However, some people in the Senate are still very concerned about how much power Caesar has, and they think that he wants to be a king. And so, unfortunately for Caesar, he is assassinated on the Ides of March, which is the 15th of March. There's a conspiracy, they band together, they decide there's no more Caesar, and they call themselves the liberators of Rome, because they feel like they freed Rome from the clutches of this dictator. However, although Julius Caesar was not an emperor, he definitely wasn't, he was a dictator, he wasn't what we consider to be the emperors. His son, his adopted son, who was actually his great-nephew, but his adopted son, Augustus Caesar, was the first emperor of Rome. So although Caesar wasn't an emperor, he is the person who sets in motion the idea of sole rule again in Rome. He's the person who embodies the idea of an emperor before the office emperor actually exists. So Julius Caesar set it up, and Augustus Caesar took control. Now, Something that is said about both of these men is that they are king in all but name. So Julius Caesar, he was assassinated because the conspirators, the liberators, thought that he was trying to be a king, and Augustus Caesar gets accused of the same thing. Now, people always say, but what is the difference between a king and an emperor? And the answer is, well, there's not really a difference. It's what they term them. So in Rome, a king is called Rex, and they really have this fear of that word. So Augustus Caesar is never called Rex in the official records because that is what they're afraid of. So although Julius Caesar was not an emperor, he does contribute massively, probably the most, to the fall of the Roman Republic, and therefore to the setup of the emperor system of governorship. And there you have it. Julius Caesar was not an emperor. He is definitely on the way to emperorhood, but he is not one of the officially recognized emperors of Rome. I hope this has been interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time on Bambasbat.